If you want to learn a language in 2023, I've got very good news for you. It's simple. Now note that when I say simple, I mean not complex. I mean the very opposite of something like getting your passport. We all know that getting your passport, it might not be that hard, but it's stupidly specific in its requirements. You have to make the appointment just to pick up the forms, tell them what hand you plan on filling the forms in with, find someone who's known you for 6 years or more, provide fingerprints from when you were a baby and all the DNA of all the pets in your house, and nothing is allowed to deviate from those requirements at all. But then when you actually go to apply for your passport, they talk to you for all of 14 seconds, go stamp, yeah, it'll come in the mail. See, it's not difficult, it's just tedious. Thankfully, learning a language is the complete opposite. It's not easy, it does take time, but it's not complex, like it's a flow thing, you can just go with the flow. So here I'm going to lay out 3 simple things that if you do frequently enough, for long enough, will lead you to fluency in a foreign language. The first and most important step is to immerse in the language. Now, in language learning, immersing doesn't necessarily mean living in a country where the language is spoken. It just means listening to and reading the language. And if you've never done this before, it can be quite jarring, and that is why a lot of people never take this absolutely crucial step. They might even try to do it, but when they feel that pinch of everything being too hard to understand and too fast to keep up, they assume they're doing something wrong and they give up, but that's completely normal. You are not doing anything wrong and you do get used to it. But if even that discomfort sounds too much for you, because it is uncomfortable, there's an excellent tool for this that I've been using since about a week after I started learning Spanish, and that is LingoPie, who are sponsoring today's video. If you don't know what it is, then LingoPie is a video on demand platform designed specifically with language learners in mind, with thousands of hours of content in 8 languages that they are adding to all the time. I don't even have time to list all of the features, but some of them are interactive subtitles, so you can hover over a word to check its meaning, and all you have to do is click to add that word to your vocab list, so it'll then show up in flashcards and quizzes. Some content also includes a feature called mashup, which will integrate the target language subtitles with those in your language. So this is great for total beginners to negate that jarring effect that I mentioned, because you can still understand everything that's happening, but every few seconds you're reminded that you're actually listening out for target language words, so that you don't slip into just reading the subtitles all the time. You can change the playback speed or even use the auto pause function if you're finding that everything moves too fast. I also find that when I'm watching in Spanish with no English assistance, no subtitles or anything, I can understand each line generally, but I can't understand the direction of the whole story because I'm concentrated so hard on just what they're saying. I'll miss what's actually happening. So one feature that I really love is the ability to toggle the entire transcript on the side of the screen so that you can get an overview of what's going on. Because it really aids comprehension, but it does so using the target language only. You can also loop single segments so that you can practice hearing a particular word or sound, and you can even record yourself to work on your own pronunciation. I can't recommend LingoPie highly enough, particularly for a beginner to the language like myself. If you find it very tedious or boring to watch stuff you don't understand, LingoPie really is the answer to that. I do want to bring up one criticism of LingoPie, and that is that they make it far more interesting to just learn Spanish than to do work. There is an entire series just about Mexican food. I'm working here! So anyway, LingoPie, it's very good stuff. Check out the link in the description to get yourself 55% off and a 7-day free trial if you just want to check it out for a little while. Thank you to LingoPie for sponsoring this video, and thank you also for making the first 5 weeks of my Spanish learning enjoyable. So that is the first one: immerse in the language, watch videos in it, read books, listen to podcasts, do anything to get it into your life. And if you find that difficult to do very much of, this second thing is aimed directly at sorting that out. Now, it's a little bit difficult to title this one, so I'm going with the kind of ridiculous title of, "But if you devote yourself to an ideal." Okay, so it sounds a bit silly, I get that, but it's essentially the act of attaching goals to something beyond just the goal itself, and it is life-changing. Here's how it works. So you start by working out what you want in what time frame, and not what you think is doable, like what you actually want. What would you commit yourself to if you knew that anything was possible? Now, obviously I can't answer this for you, but it might be something really ambitious like reading a book in your target language every day for an entire month. I know, just hear me out, okay? And then assuming that you said something that was that ambitious, like something really bordering on the impossible, Then you work out the nearest version of that, the thing that would still make you feel awesome and is still very ambitious, and determine what you would need to do to achieve it. It doesn't have to be reading a number of books or learning a number of words or anything like that. It can just be hours spent in the language, like maybe you commit to 100 hours in a given month. And once you've worked out what you're going to commit to, you turn it into its own cause and you rally behind it. So you might do something like asking people to sponsor you and giving the money to charity, or asking people to join in with you, even if it's not in language learning, like say doing that same number of hours in exercise or reading the same number of books but just in English, something that's suitable for them. It doesn't really matter what it is or who's involved. What matters is that the activity itself, let's say it's watching 60 hours of content in German, is now framed within this novel context. Suddenly, you don't have to do that. You don't have to read books in a language that you're only B1 in. You get to do that, like with friends or for charity. You have the privilege of sharing your progress, and now is the perfect time, because in January, my own version of this will not be directly language learning related. Again, hear me out. I'm pretty motivated for Spanish right now, so I don't really need extra incentives to do it, but what I do need so badly is a consistent sleep pattern. So for the first 50 days of the new year, I will be getting up at 5 a.m. or before. And I know from experience that this always leads me to being more productive, having more time spent in my language. That's why I've chosen it. I will be keeping you guys updated as to how I'm going with that in the community tab. And that's just a place that you guys can share it too. What's your challenge and how are you going with it? Who are you and what are you doing here? I can't stress enough how powerful this is. You become able to do things that are outside your normal capacity because you're no longer just yourself. Your reasons are bigger than that. It's an incredibly powerful technique. And the last technique is something that I've never brought up before because I've not really needed it until recently, and that is to start getting good at something. And by something, I mean something else. That's much clearer, yes. What? That is like a new hobby, a new skill, or even something that you already do but could be a lot better at. Now this is a really good technique because if you get truly obsessed with something and you only allow yourself to learn it through your target language, the language starts disappearing behind the content and you don't even realize that you're learning French because you so badly want to learn how to draw or how to crochet or knit or whatever it is. But it does have some drawbacks. For starters, not every field is going to be within reach in a target language, just because of the technicality of the language involved. Like for example, astrophysics, I can probably do that in Swedish but it's way out of reach in Spanish. And on that for a moment, the other drawback is that in some languages, your fields are quite limited. Like if a Swede starts a YouTube channel about drawing or playing the piano, they'll probably just do it in English, which is why for a while there, I was very into World Rally Championship and ice hockey, because those are things that Swedes tend to talk about in Swedish. Whereas my favorite thing about Spanish is that if I wanted to get into basically name a topic in Spanish, I could probably find multiple people who would talk about that very thing but in Spanish. But even if you are learning a more obscure language, don't just settle for whatever comes up. Go looking for something that you could get interested in, that someone writes about or talks about in that language. They are out there. So to learn a language is not complicated. It's simple. It does take time, but it's simple. Number one, immerse. Get the language into your brain. It goes in through your eyes and your ears. Link in the description for LingoPie. Number two, challenge yourself. Go big and rally behind your own cause. And number three, learn something else through the language. Find something that you can spend time in the language on. Do those things in decent amounts for long enough and you will become fluent in your new language. I wish you the best of luck with it. My name's Lamont. I'll see you next time.